Good evening, fabulous men of Melbourne. I'm so excited to be here. I'm representing Australian Sickle Cell Advocacy. We are an organization supporting people living with sickle cell disease. For those people that don't know what sickle cell disease is, a blood disorder that affects the red blood cells. So simply put it that for people without sickle cell disease, the red blood cells last about 120 days in the body. But for somebody who has sickle cell disease, the red cells die after 20 days. So our organization has been raising awareness since I think 7 years ago now, but we got registered about 3 years ago. And we are encouraging people to discuss health. We've seen that a lot of women are up for the challenge. We've been doing a lot of discussions with women coming forth to join our cause. So we thought this year we'd do something different. We thought we bring men on the panel to also talk about health. Just it doesn't have to be sickle cell disease. It just has to be something that you are passionate about. But before we go ahead, I'll just tell you a little bit about our organization. Our website is aussicklecelladvocacy.org. And this year, in line with trying to just talk about health, as we said, we are going to bring the first ever conference in Australia about sickle cell disease. This has never happened before, and we are excited to be supported by Hematology Society of Australia and New Zealand. So this organization is a peak body supporting blood disorders in this country. So they've come on board to come and support our organization. So to do that, I'll just tell you a bit about our organization and our conference, which is this one. We've got another website for the conference is ascaconf.org. So it's on the 17th and 18th of September. We've lined up speakers from all over the world, including our own Honorable Minister for Health and Aged Care, Honorable Greg Hunt, and Honorable Mark Butler, Shadow Minister for Health and Aging. They'll both be our guests of honor. It's a virtual conference. It's on the 17th and 18th September. So hopefully you can join us and be able to participate in different topics about sickle cell disease. So without taking so much of the time, I'll just quickly introduce my panel. So on the panel, we've got ASCA members as well as people that I've known in the community. To begin with, I'm going to introduce Shane Rao. Shane is in Queensland. He's one of us. He's somebody who lives with sickle cell disease. I've also got Mwikisa Nambita. He's the father of a young daughter living with sickle cell disease. And Prosper Chi is the father to a son, very young son living with sickle cell disease. And obviously we've got invited guests, our special guests. We've got Mr. Edward Zia, who's a master international coach I've known in a few weeks. I feel like I've known him forever. In line with that, I've also, through Edward, I've managed to connect with Tim Binland. I'm working with Tim to organize a conference. And Tim introduced me to Joe Keba, who's also part of this network. And last, not last, we've got Jerome Madesk, who's also is a mental health expert. So to do this, we thought we are going to just throw out questions here for everyone, the same questions, and just let us know how you feel about health. So to begin with, I'll start asking you the same question to just describe what you feel mental health means to you, because talking is a means of working on our mental health. So what does mental health mean to you? So I'll start with my special guest, Mr. Edward Zia. What does mental health mean to you? Thank you.
Great question. Honored to be here with you wonderful winners. To me, quite simply, mental health is very simply the ongoing state of basically one's mind energy. You know, at the end of the day, someone with good mental health is someone who's making good decisions, they're doing well in life, they're moving forward. And someone with bad mental health, and believe me, I've been there, is someone who's going backwards in life, making bad decisions and degrading. So I think definitely you can judge mental health by pretty much how someone's behaving, regardless of their external situation. So that's my take, Agnes.
Thank you so much. That's a very good answer. So the same question, I'll just go for the next person I see, Mr. Shane. Shane, what does mental health mean to you?
Hi, everyone. Well, being a sickle cell advocate and someone who has sickle cell disease, I feel that mental health is the other arm of physical health. So essentially, we are beings of complete health. So the mental aspect and the physical aspect are both parts of the same. And if that's the way I've seen it, that's the way I've grown up with it. That's why I've viewed it and treated it and honored it.
So much, and that's a very good answer. Mr. Tim Bindland, the same question. What does mental health mean to you?
Yeah, sure thing. Hi guys, great to be here. I think for me, there's actually two sides of the coin here. So there's mental health and then there's mental illness to talk about. Mental health is something a lot of people, take into consideration. We might do meditation, mindfulness, take mental health days. So that's one side of thing. And then there's mental illness where we start to get into things like anxiety, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia. So the definitions for me are a little bit split. So mental health is maintaining a healthy mindset, routine, structure, whereas the mental illness side of things is about dealing with an actual health condition in a positive way too. So with my bipolar, and we'll get into it tonight, like the way that I look at it is quite different to a lot of people, and managing that is important. So for me, it's like, what does mental health mean? Well, there's two sides of it. It's mental illness and mental health, and managing both in a way that you can. Yeah, that would be what I have to say.
Thank you so much for giving us that explanation. I think we'll go down that, just try to give the examples as we go along. Thank you so much for that. Mr. Prosper Chi, same question. What does mental health mean to you?
Well, to me, I would describe mental well-being as somebody's state of mind that you can control. Why am I saying so? I do believe we all have a different way of perceiving things and looking at them, and everything we perceive do get processed in our head. So in as much as the head is healthy in thoughts and healthy in what you have to do, that's where I feel your mental health is okay. So it's more of how you process the information you have in your head, how you sit to yourself and judge and ascertain and take decisions. So it's more of a personal thing that goes in your head, which nobody can see it, but you alone understand what's happening in there. And you can definitely tell if you are being happy, you are anxious, or you're not feeling healthy in there, because the signal tells you, I'm not fine, I'm feeling anxious of something, I need something, or I'm happy. What's giving me this happiness? I find myself excelling. Am I really happy? So it's more of how you manage the thoughts in your head and how things go along. So that's my own take on mental health.
So much, Prosper. Thank you so much for that explanation. Joe, what's your take on the same topic? Thank you, Joe. You're mute, Joe.
Yep, all good. So I'll give a bit of a different answer. So my mental health to me means mental health system, which I know a bit about, through my experiences, which I'll talk about later on. But mental health system is, recently in Victoria has come under light and it's going to get a lot of funding close to, I can't remember what the exact money amount was, but to me, mental health means mental health system, which I'll go into more. It's probably one of the most important things we can invest in as a nation and as any country moving forward to increase the happiness of the people and longevity and have everyone prosper.
So much. Thank you so much for that. Mwiki-san, same question. Thank you so much. You're mute. You're mute.
Hello? You can hear me now?
Please.
Right. For me, a mental health is a state of well-being of the mind. Just like we say, my health, my physical health is well. In the same way, it's the state of the mind, which helps one to, of course, to make right decisions, and ultimately makes a person fully a member of a community that contributes positively to community, starting from the state of the mind. So it's the state of the mind, the well-being of the mind, in my view. Thank you
So much. Thank you so much, Mr. Nambita, for that. Mr. Kapuya, you've just joined us. We're going on just on the first question. What does mental health mean to you? Thank you so much. You're mute. You're still mute.
Hello, can you hear me? All right, yeah, so sorry guys. Yeah, I had an issue with my other computer. I had to log on from a different one. So all done now. Okay, that first question, it's quite a tough one. All right, it's quite a tough one, but personally, what I can say is that let me quickly read the question again to refresh my memory. But what I can say, it's just the well-being of the mind, the well-being of, of, of yourself. That's what I can resume it for.
Thank you so much for that answer. And now I'll go back to our mental health expert, Mr. Majestic. How do you explain the first question? What does mental health mean to us?
Well, I'm going to revert that back to what does it mean to me, because everyone's given such great answers. I respectively want to bring to light, it's understanding yourself. And there's 3 different levels that I talk about. Number 1 is self-intelligence. It's a system that I've created through my knowledge, my research, in my study, and now that I'm a counseling practitioner, counseling psychology practitioner of modern applied psychology. And what I do is when I'm working with my clients, it's helping them understand themselves. It's self-intelligence. The next one is obviously emotional intelligence. And as a major ambassador holder for Australia and globally about the Emotional Health Industry Association, there's one thing that we're starting to talk about on such a global level is that we are trying to implement and change the emotional health industry. Because like Tim, no, not Tim, was it Joel? Someone mentioned that there's 2 parts, they believe it's 2 parts, the mental illness and then the mental health side. So it's so important that we understand self-intelligence. It's the ability to know yourself, because when you understand yourself, you can articulate yourself to others. And that's where there's such a big disconnect, because like I even said in the Zoom chat is like, and Ed and I had a little joke in there. It's like blame Zoom, and it's like no blame, because blame then becomes part of like external forces, when if we actually take that responsibility versus rights, then we are stepping into self-intelligence. And there's emotional intelligence and obviously your intellectual intelligence. So when I work with clients, there's nothing else that I could add to this amazing panel. So first of all, thank you, everyone. But the most important thing is to truly understand you. And that means, in my belief, that you've got to take a level of risk. There has to be a level of truly taking risks to understand yourself, which is through experience. Thank you, Agnes.
Thank you so much for that. Before we go to the next question, I just wanted to share something that I found online in terms of men dealing with their mental health and seeking help in terms of, when you have challenges. So I went to this website, and I think to do that, let's just read it together. And I'll share this screen. I think it's that one. So this is in Australia. So it says men account for only 40% of Medicare subsidized mental health services in Australia. If we go up further, it says the rate of mental health disorders between men and women is about the same, yet fewer men access professional help or a service. Men are also more likely to die from destructive coping mechanisms like suicide, drugs, and alcohol. Why is it that? So I think today is why we brought this panel, to just find out why is it that fewer men, despite having the similar number of mental health issues, women and men, we find that only 40% of men access the mental health services in Australia. I'll bring up another similar discussion in the UK as well, very similar cases as well. Why is it that? So at this point, let's go to the second question. How have you been working on your mental health? Seeing that this discussion, the scholars have said 40%, especially here in Australia, of the men are getting help, and they are getting, doing their coping mechanism are very destructive. So I'll start with Tim this time. How have you been working on managing your mental health and mental illness? Tim, please. Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I went for a period of 9 months of depression last year. The thing that got me out of that was starting the small things again. The small things being reaching back out to people, in a circle of friends, then family, then work colleagues and other people. Then it was exercise. That's an incredible thing doing that. But I guess to give even more practicality than that, today for me was actually quite a bad day. From a mental health perspective, I was off today. Agnes, I apologize. I have a video sitting on my computer that I'm supposed to be editing for you, but my brain just didn't let me today. But what happened was I noticed, so I was lying down, and that's generally what happens. You withdraw, and I picked up on that. Rather than laying down for 2 hours, I only laid down for 1, and then instead I went for a walk and cleared my head and started to sort of use those tactics. So I think it's good timing on the forum today that today was a bad day for me, and I was actually able to step back and go, well, okay, how can I take positives away from today? How can I keep going and not make one bad day turn into another bad day and another bad day and another bad day? Will tomorrow be better? I hope so. But yeah, those are the things it's the little things, I guess, if I can round this off into a nice kind of bow. The little things is what helps you maintain it, or helps me. There's other things, but I'm conscious of rambling. So yeah, that's what I'd have to say.
Thank you so much, Tim. I think I picked up from there, and this is something that I've been working on. I think today's day 28, but I've just had a crazy week. I have to post my final post about my self-care journey that I've been taking the last 28 days. It's that deliberate move to actually recognize and realize and doing something about it. Shane, have you been doing the same? If you are having those down days, have you tried to sort of work on it? How have you managed your mental health?
I think it's a work in progress, Agnes. And so many of us have shared tonight, there are so many different avenues and things we can actually do to work on it. For me personally, I use certain tools. One of them is awareness in my breathing, because so much of what we experience mentally happening upstairs, happening cerebral, happening in our mind, physiologically, our bodies are doing all sorts of things reactively. Heart rate increases, our BP increases, and all these kinds of things, and we feel anxiety and all these other symptoms. And growing up with sickle cell, that was like a normal for me. So I learned over the years to work on that by working on my breathing, being aware of my breath and calming myself down to that. But I've had to program myself, as it were, to take that step when I've noticed that I was agitated or frustrated with something. And another thing that I do actively is journaling. I write down a lot and I express myself, because it's not often that we may get an opportunity to speak to someone. And I'm grateful that I have that opportunity with my circle of friends and colleagues and people who I can connect with. But for me personally, I find writing those moments down, expressing myself creatively or just personally, but putting it down. So essentially getting it out there so that it's not just contained within, but I have an avenue here where I can express myself and go, okay, this is how I'm actually feeling. I'm acknowledging that, and now I can take the next step.
So much for sharing that, Shen. Thank you so much. Mr. Zir, same question. Would you please share with us how have you been working on your mental health? You did mention before that you had an experience, and how did you deal with that? Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So in short, the way I work on my mental health is more I take the physical angle. I find that works really well. And full credit to Tim. I just want to, if I can, publicly acknowledge Tim. Tim could have very easily have cancelled his attendance tonight, but he didn't. So I don't know about you, but I think we should all give Tim Beanland a round of applause. I'm definitely going to do that because Tim could have just cancelled or said he was sick and he didn't. So he showed up. And Tim's actually the proof of, Tim actually makes my point. Tim has been exercising more. He's been getting physically fit, as you can tell, and he persevered. So Tim is actually my answer. So I'm going to say, in answer to your question, I refer to Tim's behavior today. He is the avatar of how to deal with mental health. So that's it. My answer is Tim Beanland. That's my answer.
Very good answer. Very good answer.
Thanks,
Thank you so much for that. Mr. Kapuya, same question, please. How have you been managing your mental health? And if you want to give an example, please go ahead. Thank you.
Sure,
Thank you so much, Tim.
All right. First, I have some sort of philosophy. For me, I think everything happens in the mind. All right. So I think when you're having some depression, anxiety, or whatever it is, I try to change the environment I'm into. All right. It's either I go for a walk or either I start watching a movie. I try to push my mind to think at something else. I try to go away from the state I was into. So usually that's what I do. So either I go for work, either I try to change. I do some different activities, and I try to change my thinking, my mindset, and usually that helps a lot.
Thank you so much for that. I'm just going to refer to what Shane said before. You know, living with the chronic illness. There's again a lot of literature there to support the fact that people that live with chronic illnesses are prone to having depression and anxiety. And there's actually literature specifically on sickle cell disease where people living with sickle cell disease are anxious, like they don't know when the pain will come. They don't know when they'll be hospitalized. And so to just touch back to say that, you know, we are raising awareness about talking about health on behalf of Australian sickle cell advocacy. And I just wanted to acknowledge what Shen said, living with a chronic illness like sickle cell disease. So at this point, I'll go on the same question with Mr. Prosper Chi, who's the father of a young boy, is the youngest in our group. Just as a parent, I know I've got a parent also here, Kathy. She's also affected like Chi, who's got kids with sickle cell disease. As a parent, you are also affected. You know, it's not just the child you are looking after. Prosper, I know it was a very difficult situation to know that your son has sickle cell disease, and I'm sure, like me, it's something that was bubbling in your mind. How have you been dealing with your mental health? Thanks, Chi.
Yep. I'll start by saying I always feel affected by thinking negatively. So for me, working on my mental health, what I decided to do is I start by changing my vocabulary. Nothing negative. Despite the situation or the circumstance I'll find myself inside, I'll say, let's look out of this. What is it that I can do in order to take myself to the next stage, which I won't look backwards to say, oh, I feel bad or I'm having a bad day. I'm like, no, I've woke up. It's a blessing. Some people sleep, didn't wake up. So I'm up, that's the first blessing. Secondly, I can walk. I'm blessed. I can think. I've got my hands to work. So what positive thing can I do to keep a smile in my face and to keep other people smiling? Because smiling is contagious. The more I smile, is the more I express it out to others, and the more others smile as well. So that helps a lot, because when my son had his first seizure, his first crisis, my missus was panicking, but to me, I said to myself, if both of us are panicking, who will look after the other? It's my turn here as a man to man up and recomfort her and tell her, look, life is full of ups and downs, but at this instance, what we need to do is we've been reading about it, we know what to do, so the best thing we have to do now is brace ourselves. It might not be, it will be a bumpy ride, but We just have to see ourselves through by being positive. So my key factor here is one, change every negative thought in mind and switch all the negative words with positive words. Secondly, have someone to talk to air out the thing, because the more it keeps inside, it's bubbling. And you find yourself hard to pour it out at some point because it has reached a point which you can't take it any longer. So if you have someone which you really trust and find that you can confide in the person, I'm like, man, it's not that moving smoothly, but I'm hanging on. I just need someone to talk to, you know, to express my mind. So I go to bed with a free mind. That helps a lot. So my greatest point which I'm using here is keeping a positive mind and always be positive despite the situation I find myself, whether I be in crisis or whatever things happening. I'm like, oh, what can I do positively? Or look at things that make me happy and how I can express that joy out to some other person and forget that I find myself in a funny situation. So that's my take on it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chief, for that. I think at this point, before I bring in Joe, I'll go to Majestic, Mr. Majestic. As an expert again, as an individual this time, not as an expert, how have you been managing on your mental health? I know being an expert, because I see this even in the nurses and the doctors, you see that despite looking after people and having this knowledge, sometimes we tend to also forget about ourselves. Have you dealt with a situation where you needed to rethink and do the talk, you know, and you have been teaching and just sat back and looked after yourself?
So part of that, what I really want to share is this. There is a moral obligation and a must to understand the cost versus the payoffs. If you understand, like Tim said, if you understand that you have bad days, you must understand that the payoff can outweigh the cost. So if you're going to have a mental health day, sit back and take that time. It's the first thing to understand, because what I believe people don't do is they're not aware of the costs. And when I talk about that, is in, process, out, simply like a computer. So what you're putting in your mouth, are you eating healthy? Are you drinking healthy? And what I mean by that is simply nutrition. So when I think about myself, when I need to have my days, the first thing that I talk about is writing a schedule and sticking to a schedule. Now, some people who suffer from anxiety might even turn around and be like, I can't stick to a schedule. It's just way too overpowering for me. What I mean by the schedule is like, allow yourself an hour and a half to get out of bed. And if you don't make it, it doesn't mean you don't punish yourself. Allow the next 20 minutes to just ponder around the house, because sometimes getting out of bed is hard enough. When I look at myself with a 24-year addiction, and we won't go into it, but what I want to talk about is your question regarding, like, what do I do? I take time. I put my phone down. I give myself the self-care and realize that if I don't give myself the self-care, the costs are going to take over. So that's the first thing. If you're listening right now to the recording and the people on the panelist, when you think about that, what do you know what it's costing you if you don't look after your mental health? Because there's plenty of people that are willing to help you. And some of the things you brought up before in regards with the statistics, that can open up a whole can of worms, Agnes. So let's keep this going.
Thank you for that. So yes, it's taking that time, and it's a willingness to actually sit back and acknowledge that I do need help. And for the past few months now in our organization, we've been reminding people that in Australia, we are fortunate to have at least a minimum of 10 sessions of free Medicare, if you are on Medicare, free sessions for mental health sessions. we've been advocating and raising awareness. When you see an hematologist as a father, as a mother, as a warrior, sickle cell warrior, you can ask for the hematologist to give you a referral to see a psychologist or a counselor. 10 minimum sessions. In other states, you can actually get more. So it's the first step to acknowledge that you do need that help and be willing to seek that help. So thank you so much for that. Joe, I'll ask you the same question. How have you been managing your mental health? Joe, please. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. A couple of the questions later, I'll talk more about my story, but just a real brief summary. My mum's got bipolar 1, and it's a very intense sort of relationship, with her still even at the age of 33. So I set a lot of boundaries for myself with her because the way she treats me or the way she speaks to me affects my mental health. So I set boundaries. So rather than talking to her every day or she calls me 10 times, I will basically might return her call for 2 weeks. So I've learned to set that boundary, and in that 2 weeks, I find myself in a lot better mood. And then, you feel a bit guilty after a while and you start taking the calls again and looking after her and all that sort of stuff because I'm a medical guardian. But I set boundaries. So in my situation, boundaries are very clear, time frames and hard. The other two, which someone mentioned before, which I think was really good, was gratitude and perspective. So, perspective is something I'll talk a little bit more about later, and gratitude, but it's really, really important. I was listening to a podcast today with Yunomi Park, who was a North Korean defector at 13 years old, and you hear some of the stuff that they went through. And as soon as you hear that, like any problem you have, I think just goes away. You just think, get over yourself. And, there's so many more people worse off than you. So gratitude and perspective are the other things which I really try and practice a lot of. And to seek out a bit of perspective, it might be something where you listen to an audio book or some sort of, true stories about someone who's got an incredible story, a lot more hardships than you. If you listen to that sort of stuff, absorb it, over time, you can find yourself snapping out of any sort of down movements or moving on. They're the sort of the main points I just want to get across there.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for that. So I did say, I looked at some of the literature or the statistics in Australia, but this looks like it's a global issue. So again, just looking on the internet, I found this information from, I'll share it. This is from a UK mental health organization. So in England, around 1 in 8 men has a common mental health problem, such as depression, anxiety, panic disorder, and OCD. But surprisingly, 3 times as many men as women die from suicide. Men aged 40 to 49 have the highest rates of suicide in the UK. Men report lower levels of life satisfaction than women, according to the government National Wellbeing Survey. So that's just the information again. 87% of rough sleepers are men. Nearly 3/4 of adults who are missing are men. So having that in mind, and just the statistics we saw in Australia, why do you think men struggle to talk about health? Or why do you think all these statistics are just showing that, men, bottle up and they don't talk about health? I'm seeing Mr. Kapuya now. So let's keep it for like 2 to 3 minutes and so that we finish all the questions. Mr. Kapuya, why do you think men struggle to talk about health or mental health? Thank you.
Okay, I think we've always been seen as providers, as strong people, as the person that leads. So already with that state of mind as the leader, you don't want to show your weaknesses. You don't want to show your weaknesses. So you might be struggling, you might be having some even physical pain, but because you are the leader, you wouldn't want your kid to see that dad is sick or things like that. So I think that, for me, I think it's one of the most, one of the things that push us not talking about certain things.
Well, at least we are learning. A few women are here. At least we are learning to sort of see, the other side, that we don't really know what's going on in men's mind. Mr. Mwikisa, the same question. Why do you think men struggle to talk about just general health, mental health?
Just like the other gentleman has said, I think it's a culture that we have, perhaps the nature of men and the culture. The culture in the sense that men are supposed to be strong. Men are not supposed to be seen crying. Men don't show that they are vulnerable. So that makes you, when you talk about men illness, it makes you, it seems like it's a weakness, but I believe that it's actually a strength to say things are not all right, to say it out is a strength. But anyway, I think it's a culture that we've grown up in that makes men to be so strong that they're not affected by things. So we close up a lot as men. We close up a lot, and so we don't talk about what affects us. That's what I think.
Well, we are here to change that. Hopefully after this, we'll see a lot of men joining our cause, especially in our advocacy work. Mr. Zia, same question. Why do you think, and you are somebody who's very well connected. Have you seen this, that men struggle to talk about health? Why is it that?
All the time, and I just want to commend all the answers. And I got to say, Sergey, I couldn't agree with you more. And I've said this before, and it's been quite controversial, but I'll say it again. Society hates weak men, and that's just simple a matter of fact. So, for example, it is okay for women to cry, full stop, right? And Piero and I have talked about this many times off camera, and not to you, Piero. It's okay for women to cry, but if men cry, they're a sissy, they're a homo, they're awful. So society hates weak men, right? And to this day, society still does that. So you'll get people paying lip service to men's mental health, but ultimately society hates weak men. And even to this moment, it's not safe for men to show their vulnerable side. So I just commend you, Agnes, for putting this panel together to fight back against that societal problem.
Oh, thank you so much. And then I think, you're right. Society just has this thing, men don't cry.
Yep.
And for me, and this is like my personal experience, back home, not so much here in Australia, our culture is that if somebody dies, we go to places and mourn for 3 or so days. There's just something in me when I see a man cry. I literally cry if I see a man cry. Yeah. It's just crazy. And I think it's just growing up to show that men really hold this, and once they show the emotions, then it's really hard. Yeah. I saw my father cry once, and I just couldn't contain myself. So so the same question. I'll go to Joe. Joe, why do you think men struggle to talk about emotions?
Yeah, everyone said pretty much the words I had written down, which is vulnerability. You don't want to be vulnerable, weakness, and embarrassment, shame. There's a lot of stigma in regards to mental health. Still, there's a heap of stigma, which I'll talk a bit more. And also, I would say conditioning when you're younger. When you're in the schoolyard, you don't want to be seen as vulnerable or anyway. If you start crying, you get called names, and that's a really hard thing to get over as you get a bit older. And you're conditioned that way by the media and all that sort of stuff, portraying masculinity. You got to have big muscles and all that sort of stuff, and that's what girls want and all that sort of stuff as well. So you can't be vulnerable at all. It's very, very hard. And as Ed was saying before, yeah, it's just systemic in our Australian, well, especially Australian culture, but men culture around the world, this sort of stuff. And that it's a very hard thing to get rid of, because it starts from when you're very early. It starts in the home as well. If your parent is there guiding you in life, and you've got let's say more of an old school sort of dad, saying, get up, son, don't be a girl, cry it off, whatever it is, it's very hard to get rid of that. So your parents play a big role in it as well. And that's something that's never really talked about.
Totally true. And I think we should start breaking this myth. I think we've all grown up the same, that men do not cry. And you are instilled as you grow that, it's not right to show emotions. And that's just not the way it's supposed to be. We want to see your vulnerability as well and see how we can help. So Tim, the same question. Why do you think, men tend to not talk about health? I know you are very open about your mental health issues. When did you start?
Yeah, I'm going to give a bit of a different answer. I'll try to, because when I am healthy, I'm quite open, and I talk about my feelings. I'm quite an emotional man, if you want to put it as to words, and happily talk about it as part of my story. So I think about, when haven't I spoken up? When haven't I talked about it? And I think it's apathy. It's the, she'll be right, if you want to put it into an Australian term of, okay, I just have to get through this week and then I'll get to it tomorrow. Or it's the classic case of, I think men in general, even if it's a cold, it's fine. I'm not like, I don't need to talk about it. I'll be fine. I'll get over this cold. Like, okay, yeah, we can joke about man flu, but at the same time, I think it's not coming back to mental illness. It's an illness. It's not just mental health that we struggle to talk about. It's all illness. And I think it comes back to the apathy of, we'll be fine. We can sort this out. I mean, maybe if you look at the statistics of people that don't go and get COVID tests, I'd say males are pretty high up on that list of like, oh no, it's just a sniffle, I won't go and get a test. I think that's one of the things too. Like, yes, we can talk about tribal things and we want to be manly, but I think for me, or from my perspective, it's the apathy, like, and reaching out. I know that reaching out has been the thing that's helped, but the thing that stopped me is it'll be fine. So, but it's not fine. And then coming back to, I guess, a personal example, when I am in a depressed state, then my communication goes. So it's not a matter of I don't want to. The illness is actually the thing that stops me from reaching out because the communication is gone. So yeah, I think, again, to wrap it up, apathy and she'll be right is probably where I'd leave it on.
Thank you so much for that, Tim. I think this time I'll go to Pierre. Same question. Why is it that? What do you think about the same question?
It's almost like I preempted the idea of answering it with my last answer for the last question, is because we haven't become present to the costs. And I want that to be said respectively, even with listening to Tim, listening to Joel, listening to Edward, stigmatization does exist. But I'm going to talk about it also from a different angle. In the last 24 hours, one of my best friends from kindergarten tried to take his life last night. I want that to really sink in. I've known him for a long time. I never knew something was wrong because he never reached out. So when I talk about, because we need to become aware of the costs versus the payoffs, it's because we're not aware of it. We're too afraid of it. Anything that's unknown, anything that's unfamiliar, anything that's uncomfortable. And as the person that wrote the book on Conquer the Uncomfortable, I've written the formula that goes along with how to do that. And this is why I'm such a mental health advocate. I'm an ambassador of 3 different clubs globally, because I believe that this is a real issue right now, even with COVID. So when I talk about stigmatization does exist, I am also an expert of thought pattern behavior, so I understand it. There's a healthy coping mechanism and there's an unhealthy coping mechanism. These are all different areas that we create in our brain. So exactly what Edward and Tim was talking about, it's this whole, it's part of the fear of being judged and part of the societal view on what will happen if I do stand up for myself. But that's exactly the problem, because we're too afraid to speak our truth, because we're not aware of the costs. And when Tim, like respectively, when he says something like, I lose my language, I totally understand what it's like to lose my language. But in that exact moment, it's because there's a level of coping mechanism that is unhealthy that unfortunately he may not reach out. I've been there. I've done that. I understand it at that level. That's why I want to help change the world. Like, I've got that big, ugly, hairy goal around changing the world. Because if we don't become aware of the costs, more and more men on a daily basis, 4 out of 5 men at the moment die from heart disease. 4 out of 5. We could sit here and talk about suicide all day, but there's also a greater aspect than that. Because we're too afraid to say, no, I don't want to work today because I would rather go for a walk with my son on the beach. I would rather eat a salad than eat another pie. So what Edward said from a societal point of view, the societal views must change, and the time is now. There's been over 200 million mental health days taken in the last 12 months, and that's not including 2021. That's $16.8 billion of productivity time. right now more than ever, there is a problem, and the problem isn't COVID. The hardest thing that's going on right now is even the global leaders themselves that are making some of these decisions, whether it's a global perspective or even a national perspective, even those people are in pain right now, whether they be mental health, emotional health, or mental illness. Decisions aren't being made from a heart-based place. So that's why mental health is hard to talk about. That's why men won't stand up, because the ones that do stand up are the ones that are making changes. The ones that are driven by ego and egotistical bullshit are the ones that are hiding. And that's coming from a respectful and loving place, not an arrogant place. It's time we change.
That's powerful right there. I've got no words. Powerful right there. I think I'll go back to Edward, but first, Prosper, can you just sort of sum it up? Why is it that men don't really talk? And the same question, but Pierre, that's really powerful. I just want us to go back one little bit and see why even dying in terms of men are dying early, the life expectancy compared to women, even the health industry where I work, you see that the people that are in aged care, most of them could be women, and men do die early. So that's just something that's really powerful, Pierre. Prosper, the same question, please. Why do you think men struggle to talk about health?
The men have said it all. First, the number one issue in society, be it from whether it's from Africa or to Australia where I'm living now, this is the same society issue. We don't feel comfortable to come out and voice out our pain. And most of the times, most people die in silence because they are afraid of being looked as the weak one, or people will take advantage for them for seeing that that's their vulnerable point and they can go through that point to assess them. So it's just an issue of society, which if things get changed, I believe things are getting changed gradually, because if you look the news every day, we have women rights, right for this, right for that, but you never hear about men. Is it because we are the breadwinner of the house that we just have to work for the family, or is that we are not regarded? Because everything now is they're making new laws. You hear women empowerment, this, that one, animal empowerment, that. The question I ask myself is, the family holder, the father, those that are in power, what are they doing to support them so that they can keep the family well? Because society is gathered by families. When the family is healthy, the society is healthy. We don't have we don't have kids in the street. We don't have thieves out there. We don't have girls out in prostitution, because they have a well brought up family. And that starts from what? The branch, the father. If that father is not healthy, what happens to the society? Everything's fall apart. So what are we doing now to help those men? Because our society is more of how can we empower this? How can we empower that? But they're not talking about how can we sustain the family, and sustain that family start by sustaining those fathers. And but the fathers look themselves as being vulnerable out there, which to speak out, they don't have a voice. So they just go back into their shell and say, anyway, let's see how it happens. My father did it, I'm gonna do it. Probably my son will do the same. So that's the stigma which we face, and it's impacting a lot of people. So that's my take on it.
Well said, Prosper. Really, yeah, I know. This is why we said we have to give this platform to men. We need to break this cycle. We need to, get out of the norm, and what can we do about it? And this is why annually we'll be bringing these discussions as an organization to encourage men to speak. Because as I said, yes, men are dying early. Men are not accessing help, even if it's not there. Society is to blame. Edward, just quickly on that topic, what can we do differently to encourage these discussions and to encourage men to actually seek help?
Yeah, well, I think one of the great things, and bringing LinkedIn to it, and this is the way I've been using LinkedIn as a platform, is it's very important that we actually speak up about the topic. So again, like being here, being part of the panel. But one thing I do want to say actually is a bit of a male reversal, actually, because, and I remember doing this in front of one of our pre-virus meetups when I had about 50 people in front of me. I actually got up in front of a room of people and I said, I am the weakest, most underconfident person in the room. And I was actually running the event in front of 50 people. And it actually prompted a weird reaction from the audience. I then started on to rant saying, no one in this room has screwed up their life more than me, and I'm the weakest person in the room. And this person actually got really offended and actually said, no, Ed, I've screwed up my life more than you and I'm weaker. So I call it taking strength and being weak. So I'll openly say, I'm the most insecure person on this panel. There is no one on this panel that's more insecure than me. There's a lot of power in that because firstly, I'm taking strength and pride in my weakness. And Piero is very good at this topic. So I want to give a nod to Piero in that you can take strength and pride in being weak. So I'm the weakest person here and I'm the most insecure person on this panel. And I'm proud of that. So take pride in being weak. Take strength in being weak. Take weakness as a sign of honor, which is definitely the way I do it. And I know Piero is a master of this topic and we've spoken a lot about this.
Oh, thank you so much. I just needed to bring that in and then just, we do need to continue having these discussions and just encouraging men as we go. Like, I'll tell you now, like when we started this organization, we do have men, a few, but it's very difficult to have people to actually speak up and be able to, and this is not just this organization, by the way. I'm part of other organizations where we're actually going to bring a similar panel like this and find out like, why is it that it's that difficult? But I guess, yes, society has been instilled in men not to speak up. But I think, as Prosper said, we need to actually have all these, empower men to speak and empower them to advocate for health and just do something differently. So in line with that, I've got another question. What are some of the mental health challenges you've had to deal with or are going through right now? And let's just share so that we see if there are other men on the panel that might be able to give hints here or not. Who can I see? I think I'll start with Pierre at this time.
Well, some of you have heard my story. I created a business called Addicted to Grow. The metaphor behind Addicted to Grow means addictional behavior transformation into growth habits. For 24 years, I had an addiction to adult movies and self-gratification. I started at the age of 10. Now, what I did was I became addicted by 14. And the unhealthy coping mechanisms that I created was just the self-gratification and the attention-seeking behavior. Because while I was getting attention, no one would ask what was going on in the background. The healthy coping mechanisms that I did create out of it are called displacement. Displacement is a mental health term that happens when you take something that's not accepted by society and you do something that is accepted by society. And what I created in those 24 years of my work experience, over 2 decades of leadership roles across a multitude of industries, was I created exceptional leadership and a formula for that. So behind the exceptional leadership that I had over here that everyone thought I was, oh, wow, Piero's amazing. Well, what was actually happening in the background was my addiction that no one knew, that even only I came to terms with when my father started suffering from aged depression. And it all stemmed because I wanted to understand what that meant. I wanted to understand what his depression meant. And when I went and got the counseling, because I thought, hey, this is stirring up some things inside me, I then went deep. I went deep. When I started to go deep, I started to talk about my 0 to 21 story. Not only that, what I talk about now behind my addiction, what I talk about now is there's 3 things that we must understand. And I talk about it with everyone that I come in contact with. And this is how I got myself out of it. I needed to become aligned with my vision and my mission and what I wanted to achieve. I needed to get committed. And then I needed to understand what mindset mastery was. And once I got that, that's when I became aware of those costs. So that's a time in my life when I suffered from my own mental health, my addictions. And there was more than one. But I truly just want to thank you, Agnes, because I truly believe that you've got something here. It's an amazing panel of people. And I think moving forward, the one thing that we can do, which I believe is going to be the most important part, is be accountable for another man standing next to you. I want that to be like a point that I bring across. Be accountable for a man standing next to you. Because when we say not all men, there's part of that that's right. But the other part is because just because one man gets away with it, we are all men, and we must stand for all men, and we must raise the level of accountability together as men for the rest of the future, because our children's children need to be here to go through that. And we must break the chain now. Thank you, Agnes.
Thank you so much. That's a very good idea. I think at the end of this, I'm going to bring the window back so that you see who's next to you right now, and we'll be able to do that. I'll just go back one step back. I think I forgot to bring in Shane for question 3. Shane, sorry about that. I needed to just highlight that I did miss asking you the other question. I think you can answer both questions, Shane. If I bring you in right now, firstly, with the last question that we were discussing, why do you think men struggle to talk about health, and what is it that you've actually had to deal with? And if there's anyone who's going to sitting next to you, can take that hand and so hopefully help you out in the future. So Shane, please, the 2 questions. Thank you. And sorry about that.
No worries, Agnes. Excuse me. I think all my fellow panelists have answered so brilliantly, and I'm sitting here listening, learning, and absorbing. You know, the thing is, we all come from different walks of life. We've all gone through different experiences, but this topic we're talking about tonight is so relatable. And it's not just because we're men, it's because we're humans. And, you know, we are vulnerable. We just don't express our vulnerability. You know, we've built walls over the years, generational, because of stigma or so many reasons, which everyone's shared tonight. I won't repeat that. But that's essentially why, because we just don't want to, you know, it's hard for men to honor our truth. I think Kiero mentioned the word truth before. You know, honoring that, when you live from your truth, then yes, you can overcome it, but it's hard. It's difficult to actually take that step because it takes a lot of courage. I think it takes a lot of fight, a lot of courage to actually break those walls down and go, you know what, I need to address this, I need to take this action. The next question, which is, what are some of the mental health challenges? Just quickly from my perspective, in my experience, 20 years back, I was told that I would need both my hips replaced, and there was a possibility of me being in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. Now, as a 20-year-old, the prospect of that, the idea, just the very thought of living the rest of my life in that condition was just something that shocked me. It really made me see everything from a different perspective, because growing up with a chronic medical condition, it's different when you're a toddler and you're growing up with something, because it's sort of ingrained. That becomes your normal. But then when you're a late teen, a young adult, and you're told, hey, you might not be able to walk, you might have to live in a wheelchair, you're going to have to readjust your entire life. That's full on. You know, that was my moment where I had to think, holy crap, how am I going to live my life? Because I don't want to go down that path. However, if that's a choice I have to make, then that's how I have to do it. I have to make those choices. I have to adjust my life. And that brought about all these questions and thoughts and feelings. And, you know, that took me down the path of depression. That was my wake-up call to say, I can either live down that and go and accept everything and go, okay, fine, I'll take that wheelchair, I'll own it. Or is there a possibility where I can work my ass off so that I can do as much physio as I can, completely work myself so that I can actually be somewhat independent, use my body to actually do the normal things like walk, like drive a car, like go to work, go bowling, you know, take a walk down, take a stroll down the park or the beach when there's no lockdown. Just things like that. Can I do that? Is there a possibility? And I was told, yes, it is, but I'm going to have to work my ass off it for it. So I said, okay, I'm going to do that. And it took so much effort to take that step, literally and figuratively, because there were so many times I just wanted to give up and go, I'm done. I'm absolutely done. You know, if this is what it is, so be it. But I persisted only because I knew there was hope. I knew that, okay, there is a chance that I can actually have some kind of a normal kind of life. You know, I love driving. I absolutely love driving. For some reason, it's just one of those things. And I love doing things like, you know, playing keyboard and being creative, expressing myself creatively. So that was my goal. I wanted to overcome that. But it's not without its challenges. It is not without its demons either. And I think it takes, as someone mentioned earlier, you've got to work on it bit by bit every day. So thank you.
Wow, Shane, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much. And I will bring that person next to you. You do need, I've said this before, like you need to listen to Shane's story. His story is so powerful. It's just so inspiring, and it gives me shivers all the time. For people who don't know what Shane was experiencing, people who live with sickle cell disease, one of the things that happens to their bones, especially the bones in the hips and the shoulders, they have what they call a vascular necrosis, where oxygen is not enough to the bone. And so the bone stops functioning and it just gets chipped off. And this is one of the most common complications, such that most people need to have hip replacements. And that's what Shane was talking about. But I'm glad he's okay now, and his story is really powerful. So thank you so much for sharing that, Shane. The same question, I think I'll go to Mr. Zia this time. What are some of the things, or you know, your challenges you've had or are having, and how can we deal with it?
Yeah, well, a very common challenge of mine has been food addiction. So my advice has always been food. It's always been chocolate, that sort of thing. And just for the sake of the audience, in Sydney, we're in extreme lockdown too. I live in a place called Parramatta, which is basically, we manufacture COVID. So if there's Delta variant, we've got it, and we've got the good stuff. So can't leave my house beyond 5 kilometers. We own Delta variant. It's our thing. Now, what's interesting about all that is in lockdown 1, like as in the global lockdown 2020, I piled on the weight. I went right in my food addiction. Lockdown 2, I've been doing 100 push-ups a day and getting really fit and handsome. And what's interesting about all that is, and Piero thinks I'm very handsome, and so does Tim. And I think the biggest thing that I've found about it is you need to really push back. And I commend what Shane just said. I love what Shane said, that Shane knew he was looking at being in a wheelchair and losing his hips, but Shane pushed back and went hard in terms of the physio. And I commend you for that, Shane. So I kind of want to echo what Shane said. To me, the key thing is that you really need to go hard in the opposite direction. So for example, whenever I feel anxious, whenever I feel a bit of depression, I've got PTSD from my days in the military and the government. And when I feel like an anxiety attack coming on, I'm the first guy to go for a walk. I'm the first guy to get out. I'm the first guy to do a set of push-ups. So when you feel your mental health is sliding, and believe me, as a PTSD sufferer, happens to me, you got to do something about it. And I commend Shane. I like where you went, Shane, in terms of, yeah, I could wind up in a wheelchair. I could get hip replacements, but if I go heavy into physio up, I don't. So take massive action. If you know you're staring down the barrel of a gun, take the gun off the person pointing at you, or get out of the way. Don't just hope it won't happen. Take some massive action.
Wow, thank you so much for that advice, Edward. Definitely doing something about our mental health. That's the most important thing. The most important thing is to acknowledge, stand up, and yes, as Shane said. This time I go to Prosper. What are the things that you are dealing with right now, and how can we help?
Firstly, what I'm dealing with in my mind is the stigma that when my son grows up, he will find himself limited in doing many other activities that his friends are not doing. So I ask myself a lot of questions. What can I do to be of help in that regard? Because now he's learning swimming, and I don't know if in the future he'll be able to swim again or many other activities. So I grapple with those ideas in my mind, but there's one thing which I always get comforted with. Going back to the Bible gives me a lot of comfort because it says everything that happens for a reason. So I don't know the reason why my first son is Sickle, but I know that reason will definitely come to pass. And at some point, I may come to understand that there is a purpose for it, which I am trying as much as possible as a parent to give him the best I can to make him have everything he has to do as a normal kid, because I grapple with myself that I grew up, I had the opportunity to do everything I wanted. I was not limited with what I could do physically or mentally. But now I'm not sure. At some point, he will tell me he wants to go and play football or soccer, and I will say, yes, you are free to. So those are the little things that plays in my mind. But I also say, at some point, why not divert that idea into something as productive? Let's say, for example, he might not be able to play physically, but mentally he may be good at something else. So let me try and look at what is good at now. So we take time, invest and grow with him in that aspect, so that by the time those ideas are coming, like, why can't I? I'm like, no, don't bother about that. You're good at this. Come on, let's do it. So I encourage him so that he gets to understand that he might be limited in some aspect, but he has to find a comfort zone which keeps him happy, and he has someone that will be able to share it with him and encourage him. So those are the little things that place in my mind, and that's the way I'm managing it myself, so that as he grows older, I'll be able to have answers for him and support him as he gets bigger.
Well, thank you so much, Prosper, for that. Well, you've got a big family. You've got Shane, and Shane will be a mentor, and others that are living with sickle cell disease. And, you know, it can be a very severe condition, but people do live. And you've seen people who are football players and soccer players. So there is a way to navigate, you know, this condition. And yeah, we'll get you somebody who's sitting next to you to walk with you. So at this point, I'll go to Joe. Joe, the same question. What is it that, you know, we can help with? What are you dealing with at the moment?
Mine's a little bit different. So I have a single mum with bipolar 1, and I don't know if anyone in here's had a parent with, or got a parent with schizophrenia or bipolar or something. That's a very, very hard thing to live with. And she's only 63 and been recently diagnosed with dementia, and they've had to give her a CAT scan to see if she's got Parkinson's, because she's got tremors and stuff. We just got to rule out if it's from the psychiatric medication or not, and all the ECT over the years. So basically I think last year I had to basically sell up all her stuff in a housing commission home, 300 k's in a regional town called Warrnambool, and put her involuntary into a nursing home, which we had on the works for a while because she kept falling over at home and all this sort of stuff and risky behavior. So that's been very tough. And I'm her medical guardian. So basically I have psychologists, I have doctors, I have people at the nursing home probably once a week engaging me, telling me she's either fallen over, or, you know, we've got some health issues, or we've got to rule out Parkinson's, or she's got early onset dementia, and all this sort of stuff. So basically for me, I live with it on a daily basis. Me personally, growing up in that situation, I'm lucky. I think, you know, a lot of kids who have parents with bipolar and schizophrenia and severe mental conditions have a lot of resilience. So for me, I've never really asked for help, never really wanted it, because I would never listen to someone who hasn't been in my lived experience. And that's why I think a lot of kids, or a lot of people who are affected by, you know, let's say parents with mental health conditions, can only really listen to learn from those who have had that themselves. Because if you don't have that lived experience with these sorts of things, it's very hard for someone they might be able to empathize with you, but they can't in reality ever know what you're going through. And it just makes it very hard to listen to people. So me personally, it's just something I've always grown up with. I've, you know, over the years been conditioned with it. I've been a bit more resilient than most, I would think, and due to my circumstances. So I'm pretty hard-headed. I'm pretty strong emotionally. So it's not really much help required, but it's just one of those things where what helps me actually is I do a podcast. I do content called the Lived Experience Podcast, and I talk with people who have had similar experiences to mine or share their mental health stories. And I find I can talk on camera and I can't talk to someone one-on-one about it. But I can have 100 people watching it or whatever. That helps me, and that's what I do. So I try and help myself and help other people in that way. So, yeah.
Wow. You know, Joe, in that aspect, I think we are very similar. For me also, during the earlier days when our daughter was diagnosed, I did seek help. I think 3 times I did seek help. There was just these emotions. There's a lot of as a parent, there's a lot of self-blame when you have a child who has got a chronic illness. And the moment I started talking about it as well, like yourself, I do this all the time. I just felt a sense of relief, and that self-blame is not there. There's always, as Prosper said, you know, the universe has got a way of doing things in their own way. There's always a purpose. And for me, I feel my daughter was diagnosed with sickle cell disease as the purpose to bring this awareness in Australia with all our team together. So looking at time, we are going to power on. I think at this point, I'm going to ask the same question to Tim. Tim, what are you dealing with and how can we help?
Yeah, I'll be very quick, just because of time. So my backstory, I got bipolar 2. So the different variant to Joel's mum with bipolar 1. Bipolar 2 is classification of a lengthy period of depression and ability to go into mania. The way that I define it is the depression gives me a level of knowledge, lessons, and insights into myself that a lot of people don't have. And then the mania gives me ability to think creatively, passionately, and inspirationally, and level of influence that a lot of people can't tap into either. So it's actually a positive thing if framed in that sense. But the thing that I guess people can help me with, if that's the question is, and Edward's seen this, is I'll just go radio silent if I'm not healthy. So if someone messages me and I don't reply within a week or 2 weeks, unless I'm in some yoga retreat, which I haven't been to one, I don't know why that came up. But yeah, if I start going radio silent, the people in my close network, Joel, Edward, you guys know this by now, and so I guess either reaching out to myself if I don't respond. My girlfriend's on Facebook, so that's the other thing. If you don't hear back from people, don't jump to the conclusion that they're ignoring you. Maybe something's actually wrong. So is there someone else you can contact beside them, and then they can be like, oh, look, they're going through a hard time at the moment. The best thing that happened to me last year was people reached out to my girlfriend. And she was able to communicate with them, and she filtered that back for me, and those things sort of spurred me on, because it's like, oh crap, she'd be like, who's James, or who's Michael, and I'd be explaining who these people are that she didn't even know, and like that support, even if I'm not outwardly communicating, is incredible to have that. Because on the back end, when you're getting better again, you know who you can message straight away. I messaged Michael and James and Edward pretty much as soon as I started feeling better again. So that's the way you can help me, but it also can help other people. And I think to double down on that, if someone isn't responding to you, maybe it's not because they're avoiding you. It might be because they're actually not doing okay. So not just checking in with them, but checking in with the people around them. That's
well said, Tim. Thank you so much for that. And again, there's that commonality where we said reaching out, but also if you feel like your friend is missing in action, do reach out. I have my own days where I'm also like in bed, and sometimes it's just nice to get that text and that voice call to just hear that people care. So thank you so much for that. I'll go to Sage, the same question, Sage. What are some of the issues that you are dealing with and how can we help? Thanks, Sage.
Right. I would say having a daughter with sickle cell, it can be very challenging at time. And but I would say Shen mentioned something. He was talking about hope. So having that hope that things are gonna be better, that a cure is gonna, there's gonna be a cure, or things like that, are the type of things that really help. And the thing that personally really helped a lot is the fact that I had siblings who passed away from sickle cell. So I always talk to my mom. She had lost 4 kids from the sickness. So talking to her, trying to understand how did she go through. And especially when you think of it, it's not today's environment. It's not today's it's not Australia. That was back in the Congo, where people just having a kid with sickle cell, people look at you as if you did all the sin of the world. So she lost four kids, and talking to her has always been something that helped a lot, because she always knows what to say, how to encourage, and things like that.
Thank you so much, Sage. So from now on, at least you have that person next to you. You can also talk to somebody after this. So powering on, we have Mr. Mwikisa, this question as well. What are some of the challenges that you are going through, and how can this panel help? Thank you. Mr. Mwikisa, are you still here? Yes, you are mute. You're mute.
All right. All right. Surprisingly, I'm going through the similar situations like Prosper is. I'm worrying about how my daughter will grow up and enjoy life. So now I'm just trying to get involved so much in her life, trying to share my time with her more, and trying to do some hobbies. I'm hoping she may not see. I've not been a sports person myself. I've liked reading, so I'm trying to share this hobby with her, with the other children I have, so that they may like reading as well, so that perhaps that's something she would like to do along the way. Yeah. So you see, when she was diagnosed with sickle cell, I had no idea because we don't have anyone in my family with sickle cell, so it was a surprise. For some time, I didn't believe it. I didn't think this can be true. Until with time, I came to accept that, okay, it's fine. And from my upbringing, you see, I grew up in a Christian environment. I had already developed a positive attitude in life. I was thinking there's a reason it will get better. I still have the hope that it will get better for my daughter, And unfortunately, she hasn't had serious problems with a condition. She's been very good. We've only had a few times when she's gone to hospital because of just the high temperature. That's all we've had so far. She's 3 years now. So I'm still hoping that it will get better. It will not affect her as much. And then I'm just trying to share my life with her, trying to find what she'll like. So that's the issue I'm having to deal with now. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mwikisa. It will get better. The good thing about this is, we are in Australia and we've got the best healthcare system in the world. So it will get better. And with science and technology, I see, an available cure in the future. And there's so many things that are happening. So just have that hope. You've got the family in ASCA who are there to support you. And now you've got a big family of men on this panel who are going to support you along the way. So thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, that's always on my heart, but it will get better. I can assure you it will get better. So we are just going to do the last question. And with that also, if you give your last word so that we try to be on time, what advice do you have for other men facing health issues affecting their mental health? And in there, maybe just an extra second to just your last word as well. I'll go with Mr. Zia. What message do you have for people having, these issues? Thank you.
I think the big thing for anyone dealing with these issues now is now's the time to do something about it. So I actually don't like the idea of hope that much. Hope to me is a very, very passive way of dealing with reality. It's like, I hope things will get better. I hope this all works out. It's a bit of a loser thing to say, in my opinion. My view is that you need to do something about it. So, for example, and this is where I absolutely can't commend Tim enough, Tim Beanland. Like, again, Tim Beanland had a rough day mentally. I was on a podcast with him earlier today, and Tim came tonight. He went out and got some exercise. He could have gotten a cold. So, to me, it's taking action. So don't be in hope mode. Only losers hope for stuff. Winners actually do something about it. So, again, Tim Beanland's my answer. If you're feeling bad, like, I don't know, I don't get depression, I get more anxiety. But if you're feeling depression coming on or a bit of anxiety coming on, don't just sit there and hope it goes away. Take some preventative action. That's all I can say. And I just want to commend everyone for an amazing event. I got to say, I've gotten a lot out of it. And all I can say is take action.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Zia. Yes, please take action and seek help. Shane, what message do you have and your last word? Thank you.
Just very briefly, I think it's okay to not feel okay. You know, accepting how you feel. So it's okay to not feel okay. That's really it. And finally, just immense gratitude from everyone, all the fellow panelists. I've learned so much. I'm still learning so much. It's just been an honor to hear everyone tonight. So, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Shane. Joe, the same question. Well, what message you have and your last word? Thank you.
Sure. You know, you share your story, share it loud, share it online, share it many ways, because you never know who will message you out of the blues with similar scenarios, or you'll be surprised who might come out of the woodworks. And make sure you share and tell people if you are got any issues. You'll find someone out of the blue. You will help someone as well. And the other thing is my final point is basically just people need to remember mental health is more than just depression and anxiety. Mental health, sort of depression and anxiety, seems to be the only thing people associate with. There's a lot more: bipolar, schizophrenia, BPD. There's kids who have parents with these conditions. There's all these other things. So mental health is a lot more than depression and anxiety. So just try and remember that next time if you ever donate or do charity things. You know, there's more organisations than Beyond Blue and these sorts of things as well who have who help kids in those who have bipolar parents and schizophrenia and all that sort of stuff. So broaden your scope.
Thank you so much for that. Very, very helpful. Sage, your last word, please, and just the message to anyone having difficulties. Thank you.
I think my last message would be just talk to people, talk about it, talk to, you know, when you've got something, don't be afraid to share. Because, you know, it's in every aspect of life, you know, even people get divorced or this or that because they don't talk. People find themselves into so many different situations because they don't talk. So talk to people, feel free to open up, and that's the message I have to finish up with.
Thank you so much for that message, Sage. I'll come to Tim. What message do you have for people out there and your last word? Thank you.
Yeah, I just say, yeah, speak up, but also do your research into things. I just want to give a plug of Joel's podcast again. It's resources like that. The stories that Joel is sharing are incredible. He's had AFL players on talking about mental health. He's had incredible people from Beyond Blue, but also it's the, you know, just want to thank Joel because, you know, I've been on it. I'm not going to plug that, but that was the first podcast that I was on to in a lengthy period actually talk about my journey with it over a 45-minute session, which has really helped me share my message as well. So yeah, I'll chuck a link to Joel's podcast just because I think resources like that are needed. And also it's talking about things other than, like, the conversation around depression and anxiety is high, and that's fantastic, but where's the conversation about bipolar and PTSD and all these other things, even the parent side of things. So yeah, I just wanted to leave on that, and yeah, good stuff, Joel.
Thank you so much for that, Tim. Prosper, your last word and the message to others. Thank you.
My last word will be, have someone to talk to, and in every situation, look at the positive thing. I will quote an example with Joel. Joel, with all what he's faced, he's used his platform to create a podcast to help other people with it. So I do believe he's finding his purpose, despite the fact that he finds himself in that situation. So whatsoever thing you find yourself in, look for the positive thing you can do out of it to help, not just yourself, help others as well, and listen to yourself from time to time. From my experience, what I've learned so far with my son is patience. I've learned that I'm impatient, that I need to be very patient. So listen to yourself time to time and grab those little things, because those little things build up to bring something positive in you that you didn't know. So my greatest talk will be, get someone to talk to, look at yourself, reflect, take the positive out of it, and then make sure you share it out. So don't keep it for yourself, share it out with other people. So that's my talk for it.
Thank you so much for that. Mr. Mwikisa, your last word and message to others, please. Thank you.
My last words would be that one should accept the situation they are in and know that there is help around. You know, you're not closed in a situation by yourself. There are other people who may be in a situation like yours who may be able to help you, or they are just independent people who may be able to help you, and that you know that you are not alone. You know, people have come down in that depression to a point where they think that no one can help them. But in any situation, there's someone who can always help you. And if you speak to the right person, you will find help. And it's good to be around people, family, friends are the ones that are going to encourage you, who understand and encourage you. My last words are that mental health is important. It's important for us to continue to maintain our mental health, to continue to look after our mental health. It's very, very important. For us men, you know, our families may rely on our mental health, you know, so they will rely on our holding it up together in our mental health. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mwikisa. Very, very well said. Lastly, on the panel today, and I did this deliberately just because he's an expert in this area. Pierre, what message do you have for people out there? And please, people, let's share the connection so that after this, we have people that we can reach out to. Pierre, your last word and message to people out there. Thank you.
Firstly, Agnes, thank you very much for this opportunity to share. Secondly, to everybody, thank you for your commitment for being here. Because without you putting a voice behind your own feelings, thoughts, and words, then where would we be as a community standing together? My mentor once said to me, the past doesn't represent who you are, but it definitely sets the backbone for how you show up in this world, because you truly get a choice. I make what's not okay to talk about, okay to talk about. So if you're listening to this audio, if you're in the audience and you're listening to this and you think that I'm just talking to just you because there's times where it's resonated, it's because I am. So here's my advice to you. The first step in the book of Conquering the Uncomfortable is really take a moment to look at yourself, be honest, and unearth the truth behind the lies that you've been telling yourself. Get hold of someone who you can talk to. Be honest. Find the truth behind those lies. Be vulnerable. Yes, it's tough. Yes, it sucks. But the grass is not greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it.
Wow, wow. Thank you so much for that. Very, very powerful. And here we are. Who are you sitting next to? Let's get a screenshot. Who are you sitting next to? Reach out to anyone you are sitting next to, up, down, right, left, and let's continue the discussion. Thank you so much for this. It's been very, 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 very informative for all of us. And we are going to have this video recorded and give a copy to all the panelists. Unfortunately, Sam couldn't join us today. Maybe next time we will have this annually. We are going to reach out and he can join us. He's got a story to tell as well as a rare voice advocate. So just power to us. Thank you so much, men, for opening doors to having these difficult situations and deliberately to share that personal experience. One thing though, I did say that I was doing an experiment on during this period of advertising. One thing I noticed that we don't talk, men. You are in a group and we are having a session of mental health and we never even said hi. I know Joe, Edward and Pierre and I think Joe team, but others just kept quiet. If it was women, I tell you by now, you'd know my firstborn and when I was born and where we just share and share and share. But, you know, I'm glad this turned out okay. But next time, say hi and say hi, you know, who's the dog and your mom. That's us women who definitely do that. We've been in a group for 1 week and it's quiet. But thank you so much. This was so helpful. Power to you, everyone. And yes, please, the screenshot is here. We've got Carl Carl down here, KW is joining us from the Trinidad and Tobago. He's one of our regular who comes to support us. We've got Isabella in Queensland and Kathy in Perth. They're all part of our Team ASCA. So thank you so much, everyone. And we're just about slightly 4 minutes after. This was very, very informative. And we look forward to you joining us again in the future. Thank you so much.